Okay, so joining us now is Marieke Flament. She's the newly appointed CEO of the NEAR Foundation. Welcome, Marieke.
Hello, hi.
Hi,
Thanks for having me here.
So one of the things that sort of became a talking point, you guys, the NEAR Foundation, of course, focused very much on Web3 and that future. Going into the new year was this very vocal battle between Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, and people like Chris Dixon in the VC space, saying that Web3 is all about, just a buzzword to try to develop money for VCs and the like. What does Web3 actually mean to you guys?
Yeah, to us, Web3 actually means adoptions, right? It means like, what does it mean for content creators? It means like, what does people are going to be able to actually do and to monetize differently what they have and what they own. And I think if you think today, in today's world, if you're a content creator, if you actually have some image or video or anything that you do, the reality is that you can start monetizing that on a platform, but you don't really own your content. And especially as, let's say, an artist, the royalties that might be made going on after and after, you actually don't have that. So I think, we really believe that Web3 can be something that really decentralized, that reshares powers of data, of ownership, and what actually ultimately individual users can end up doing.
So if my understanding is correct, I believe that NEAR is also positioning itself as a kind of rival or competitor to Ethereum, right? In terms of transaction time. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that a correct assessment that NEAR is also trying to offer kind of better service, so to speak, than Ethereum, and how it plans to do that?
Yeah, so we don't really see ourselves as competitors, right? We actually see that it's a world where different chains will have to collaborate and be together. So we definitely don't put ourselves as competitors. What we're trying to do with NEAR Protocol is a permissionless proof of stake network that is actually extremely fast, that is simple to use for developers, for end users. So we're aiming a lot on simplicity to make sure that we can have a solution that enables really Main Street adoption. But again, in our world, we're more looking at interoperability and how can a world with different chains collaborate, because the reality is that you probably don't need to have only one, but you'll need to have several chains who can do different things and who actually need ultimately to collaborate.
So, Marieke, Happy New Year, first of all. And second, you are supporting now UST, right? The Terra, and not USDC, where you once worked at Circle. So are you at any point going to have NEAR support USDC, or have you done any outreach to them to get them on your network?
Well, look, we do have a lot of places where we need to be integrated with partners, and I would say UST is the first one. We definitely are looking to work with others. USDC is obviously a place where I worked at Circle, and we have strong ties, and we're looking to actually continuously strengthen those ties. But again, it's a matter of prioritizing and all the different building blocks that we need to build. So I would say stay tuned.
So Marieke, congratulations on the appointment, by the way. But just picking up on Lawrence's point there, I mean, you've got an interesting CV. I was taking a look at it, and before you were at Circle, you had a background in banking. You've also worked, interestingly, with consumer brands, some luxury brands in particular, and that part jumped out at me. I'm just wondering, like, as you envisage this Web3 world, what role do you see for brands in that? What are the opportunities and challenges for brands in a Web3 world?
Yeah, well, I think let's start with maybe opportunities, right? If we look at an opportunity for creators, and again, brands and ownership of brand and the asset you create, and if you're today a retailer with a big name, how do you actually translate that in the digital world? I think it's still very difficult to do, and I think that's an opportunity that Web3 is going to build. I think when we look at challenges for any large company or large institution, as we all know, the world of crypto and the world of blockchain goes really, really fast. And I think the challenge there is actually how do you keep up and how do you figure out what are the use cases that are going to be used? What I think is really important is ultimately the words Web3, blockchain, crypto, all that, to end users and consumers and to what it does to our life, it doesn't really matter. It's really all going to be about like, what does it do? What are the use cases that can come there? So I think when I think of brand and retailer in particular, I think about that, like the opportunities of creating new worlds and creating actually new products in a different way.
So if you had to define it, what does Web3 mean to you? How are you telling people, given your background in let's say LVMH and what have you, when you go back to your former coworkers and you explain to them what Web3 means, how are you describing it?
I'm describing it as an end user now, you can finally own what you create. You can live differently. You can own your governance. You can own your data. So it's basically making sure that as an end user, you can put that back into your hands rather than having to go actually to centralized institutions or companies where you actually honestly don't really know what's happening to the content you create or to your own data.
That's a nice, concise definition of Web3. Going back to this question about multi-chain, we're hearing a lot about this, right? We're moving into a multi-chain world. This is the future. What, in your view, are some of the main challenges or obstacles that are still in the way from us reaching this multi-chain world? What is keeping us from getting there?
I think what's keeping us probably from getting there is just the amount of things that we have to do, right? So when you think of chain, like there are actually, lots of different things, lots of different projects. So what do you prioritize? How do you actually do that? And how do you make that in a way that is seamless, that doesn't use that many resources, and how can we actually integrate that? I think some of the big movements that we can start seeing are going to help to actually have the building blocks and the foundations. But ultimately, in a space that is booming as much as what we see in crypto, the problem comes to prioritization and making sure that as we come to saying who works with who and how do we work together, we have actually the time to do that.
Marieke, as I understand it, you're in the business, of course, of distributing grants to entities to build out this Web3 future. Can you talk a little bit about the criteria that you apply to that? Is it purely for building on the NEAR protocol, or are there opportunities for folks who are building in this multi-chain environment?
Yeah, well, look, so definitely our goal and our aim, in particular as a foundation, is to raise awareness and to increase usage and build on NEAR. So definitely wanting to build on NEAR or wanting to build to help the NEAR ecosystem is fundamental in the distribution of grants. And that's one of the things that we look at is how is this going to help the ecosystem and how does it help actually move forward this mainstream adoption of what we believe is for Web3. So that's definitely one of the first criteria. But if it's to help build something that builds interoperability for NEAR and others, definitely come to us. Thank you for raising that. There's a lot of grants, so definitely check the website near.org because there's a lot there that we can offer.
And they don't have to necessarily develop particularly for NEAR, right? Is that my understanding? Is that they can do other things, or is it primarily for NEAR? I mean, what do you expect the developers to do really with the money other than build cool things? I mean, is there anything specifically, any sort of criteria that you have for giving that money?
So we do look at building on NEAR, so leveraging actually the NEAR technology to build something. We're very open-minded in terms of use cases when it comes to, we look at milestones. So we look at, okay, what are the things that you're trying to achieve? What support do you need from us? How can we actually help? Within the network and the reach and the expertise that we have, how can we actually help you do that? But primarily, actually, it's building on NEAR to help the NEAR ecosystem.
One of the other themes that we've seen recently is the increasing globalization of crypto. Do you have a sense of NEAR where your users are located geographically, or where some of the geographic priorities will be for the coming year?
Yeah, great question. So we do definitely see that our users are like across the world, right? So it's definitely not a game of having users who are only, let's say, from the US or only from Asia. It's very, very much across the globe. And I think that's the power indeed of what ecosystem like NEAR and others can also develop. But the idea there is that it's at the same time, it's very global, but at the same time, it sort of becomes very local, because we're back in a world where if you have a local network, let's say, for example, in Ukraine, where some of our founders are from, if you have a local network in Ukraine, that can be extremely powerful from a language perspective, from also starting to have actually this network effect of people together and collectively. But broadly speaking, we're extremely global, and I think that's only going to continue going that way.
Marieke, the NEAR token, I think, had a pretty good year last year. So what I understand is 800% gains, if that's correct. That obviously boosts your treasury, but, we live in volatile times. Can you talk a little bit about how you manage those funds and how you think about when and how they should be dispersed?
Yeah, so as a foundation, I would say, our primary focus is really much more on usage and bringing billions of users who can actually ultimately beneficiate of the NEAR protocol and what it does. So I will be very open. We are not focusing on the price, and the price, does the price do is not in itself a goal that we do have. What it means indeed is more that therefore the treasury and the capital that we have that we can look at and how we can actually make sure that we develop that is really important, and therefore ensuring continuous development and deployment of that capital in a fair way is really important.